If you click here now, you can see the extensions. By clicking Add and Installed, you can view the installed extensions. I have some installed right now, and I would like to recommend a few that I think you should install. First, there is an extension called Babel JavaScript. This highlights JavaScript code according to the syntax, so it would be good to install and use this. Next, there is bracket pair colorize, which is, in my opinion, definitely highly recommended. It helps to effectively and efficiently highlight matching brackets, making your coding experience much more organized and easier to follow. The previously mentioned features highlight syntax, but this one, known as bracket pair colorize, is particularly useful because we often use various types of brackets, like parentheses, square brackets, and curly braces. It clearly marks these brackets with different colors, making it much easier to read the code. This is also a great feature. There is something called Code Runner. It's not limited to just JavaScript and TypeScript. It includes useful snippets for various languages. I introduced it once before. It's a collection of snippets, specifically code snippets. So, as you work here, using the recommended code snippets can help increase your development productivity. As I mentioned, even if it's not necessarily JavaScript or TypeScript, it can be very helpful when working with other languages, such as C or C++. And when we set up the editor config last time, we actually configured it in order to work properly with VS Code. By installing this, we can ensure that the editor config we set up last time functions correctly. In that project, the indentation and other settings and configurations will operate according to the configured values. So, if you want to have different indentation settings for different projects or languages, you can just slightly adjust the editor config for each project. This is the extension program for using editor config. Next, since we are using JavaScript and TypeScript, you might think of tslint when working with TypeScript, but tslint is no longer supported, so you need to use ESLint. After installing the ESLint extension and setting up the ESLint configurations in the project, the ESLint related features and functionalities will be applied immediately in that window, making it very convenient. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at my extensions, there are quite a few related to snippets, including Babel JavaScript. Unlike Babel JavaScript, extensions like Code Runner provide snippets that are more specifically tailored to React or React Native. For instance, the full stack, React and React Native snippets offer useful suggestions and provisions that are focused on these frameworks. Similarly, the JavaScript ES6 code snippets provide extremely useful and beneficial code snippets like this. These are essential tools that are needed when you run JavaScript or TypeScript in your code editor. And honestly, they are not absolutely necessary for our project at this point in time, because we already have the robust and comprehensive TypeScript, which is quite efficient and serves as the fundamental basis for our entire project. However, in cases where you might later code with just a JavaScript file or a TypeScript file, these snippets can significantly help by building them independently in various scenarios. The Prettier Code Formatter extension, as I mentioned before, helps to meticulously organize and structure your code in a very nice and orderly manner for better readability. When you install this extension, there is a format shortcut in VS Code, for me, using a Mac. The shortcut is Command plus Shift plus F or Option plus Shift plus F. If you press that, let me quickly show you how it works in practice. Just a moment. I checked the shortcuts, and for me, on a Mac, pressing Option Shift F is the shortcut for code formatting. When I install the Prettier extension, it works together with ESLint to format the code nicely. So, it's quite useful. Also, there are snippets for React Native. Similar to the ones we've seen before, These are extremely useful and beneficial snippets related to React Native. However, personally, while I find React Native snippets and the other snippets we've discussed extremely useful, I still feel that there are a few things that are lacking for me in my opinion. As I mentioned earlier, I originally explained how to create snippets when I was working with Arduino. It's best to create your own snippets that perfectly fit your needs, and I will elaborate on this. I will explain this further later, but you might wonder what happens if your development environment changes, or if you switch PCs and reinstall VS Code. I will provide additional explanations on that later. And with React Native tools, you can immediately execute commands related to React Native, such as whether running the React Native emulator or on a physical device right from the palette. Next, regarding strcpy, I mentioned that I'm mirroring program last time. If strcpy is installed, this extension allows you to execute the mirroring program directly by typing commands in this panel. Next is StyleLint, which is an extension that helps with styling code. It plays a similar role to ESLint, providing immediate syntax checking and other features for style sheets, allowing for quick application of corrections. In the case of VS Code and NVM, we previously set up NVM-related configurations with NVM-RC. So, let me show you an example of how NVM works when you go to the terminal in a project. Normally, when you open the terminal, Node.js related features are not activated or. However, there is a terminal window within VS Code. When you open the terminal here, it detects the presence of an .nvmrc file in the project and automatically runs NVM use to activate the corresponding Node.js version. This is what the extension I just described does. That's how it is used. And then, in my case, I use styled components to structure things like the user interface and functionality. So, the syntax related to styled components, since it uses CSS in a way that the CSS is embedded as text within the component, doesn't allow for proper syntax highlighting with tools like StyleLint. However, if you install this, it will provide proper syntax highlighting and readability for the style sheet inside, making it look cleaner and easier to develop. I mentioned that I use this as my package manager, and by installing this, you will be able to use various related commands in the panel. Next, I mentioned earlier that when you are developing, it would be great if you could create your own optimized snippets that suit your preferences. So, when you create that, there might be the hassle of having to redo it. When you change your PC or reinstall VS Code, this also applies to the installed extensions. But you don't need to worry about that. If you look here, there's something called Settings Sync. By using Settings Sync, you can upload your settings to GitHub, which I previously explained as Gist, and download the settings from Gist. This way, if you use multiple laptops or work in a new environment, you can synchronize your settings. Nowadays, if you sign up for an account in VS Code, there are also sync-related features, so even if you create snippets, you can synchronize them and retrieve them later. Therefore, you don't need to worry about themes or extensions. In this session, I explained the development packages we installed last time and essential development programs that will make our future development more convenient. Next time, I will explain styled components, and we will organize the screen based on styled components. I will explain how to organize the screen in the next session. So, I will see you next time.